the Hoffman Show on a Wednesday on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. The night after the Wizards, unfortunately, Anthony Haney wizarded. Oh, they wizarded. Did not get the number one pick. The Wizards, ye of 6.7% chance. Meaning that in the lottery, the way the NBA draft lottery works, they had Anthony Haney 67 lottery ball combinations. Because for those that don't know, here's how this works. The lottery, there's like 1 through 14, I believe, or the balls are numbered like that. And then there are 1,000 combinations that can come out. Each of those 1,000 combinations is assigned to a team. The Wizards, 6.7%, have 67 combinations. I believe that math checks out. 67 divided by 1,000, 6.7%. After the first three numbers were selected, the Wizards had not a 67 out of 1,000, a.k.a. 6.7 out of 100, a.k.a. 0.67 out of 10. Impressed with that math, Anthony, aren't you? I saw that look on your face.
That was good math.
Yeah, I saw that.
I was struggling to follow at first, but then you kept on talking. I was like, okay.
So based off of the machinations, 0.67 out of 10. But after the first three lottery balls were selected, they had 6 out of 11. They got the first three balls right. That is over a 50% chance that the Wizards would get Victor Wembanyama. He of 7'5". He of whom Adrian Wojnarowski said on the broadcast might be the best offensive and defensive player in the league, according to some scouts, by his third year as an NBA professional. He who is not even, I believe, 19 years old. He's still 18. He's a child, and he's already awesome. He's so good. He's 7'5". He's skilled. He can shoot. He shoots one-legged threes. He sounds like an alien from outer space, and he plays like 1-2. And then the Spurs got him. Because, of course, they did. And I got to say, congrats, Greg Popovich. You, sir, have had a blessed basketball life. Honestly, for the league, I kind of love this. Of course, it would be amazing if he could go to a big market and, he's already going to have immense star power because of the hype. But realistically, a place like San Antonio is the place where he might become his best. A place like an Oklahoma City, a San Antonio, where there are not the pressures and temptations of something larger. This kid is gotten so much hype and attention and everything, and he seems to have just a great head on his shoulders. You hear his interview last night with Brian Windhorst, who is stupidly getting criticized, as is ESPN, for what was a 70-second interview on draft night. Brian Windhorst was not there to talk to him for 70 seconds on the draft broadcast, you donks. I can't believe that Awful Announcing wrote that up. Typically a very good website that does a lot of great, hey, did everybody see this? This was weird kind of work, or highlights good things that the media does, despite the name. No, they did not send Brian Windhorst for a 70-second interview at 2:30 in the morning Paris time. They sent Brian Windhorst to do extensive reporting on Wembanyama, talk to him, spend time with him, his agent, his family, and what will likely be a long-form piece that is presented closer to the NBA draft. And oh, by the way, you're getting time for one of your top insiders exclusively with the future of the league. That's good use of resources. Anyway, media sidebar over. That's how close the Wizards were. Instead, they'll pick eighth. And it's just such a bummer, because it would have been the culmination, Anthony, of the best month in DC sports history since, at the very least, since the Nationals won the World Series. Capitals won the Stanley Cup. But, okay, those was there anything else that happened those months? I can't remember.
I don't think so.
I mean, championships are pretty good.
Yeah.
So that is hard to beat. The whole reason you'd be excited about Wembanyama is because you think he can help you win one. But the worst owner in sports didn't sell the team in that month. Could you imagine if Dan Snyder announces he sells the Commanders and the Wizards get Victor Wembanyama in the same month? But the cruelty of the NBA draft lottery, Anthony, does not stop there. No. It's not like, oh, well, let's pick another number. Now for that last one. The Wizards got the second pick. Nope. The way it works is those top picks, they run a lottery for them, and then everyone else just goes in order on the way down. So the second pick lottery comes and goes. No Wizards. The third pick lottery comes and goes. No Wizards. Wizards stay exactly where they were at the 8th overall pick. They would be picking 7th if they had won a coin flip with the Indiana Pacers. They couldn't even win that. Dude, could you imagine if the Pacers had won the lottery? That would have been even worse.
Would have been scary.
I was like, hey, if you had lost the coin flip, that is literally the only thing worse than what happened. You had 3 of the 4 lottery balls. The last one comes out. It's not you. The only thing that would have been worse is if the spots that you would have been in, had you lost a coin flip instead of won it, that team jumps you and gets the number 1 pick for Victor Wembanyama. That would have been worse. So see, Wizards fans, as usual, could be worse. Just stuck on doing the middle thing. Could have been worse, I guess.
I just can't believe, like, every time it comes to the lottery, and I want to say, how many years has it been around? Like 23 years or so?
No, 39.
39? Or the Wizards, I guess, have participated in it about 23 times.
Okay, yeah.
We just always fail to, like, move up. Sometimes we end up moving back. And there's only been 3 times where we've had luck on our side and we've been fortunate enough to just move up. And it's just like, there's like some type of dark cloud over this organization. I don't know what it is. But when it comes to this lottery, luck just isn't on our side.
I texted CK this last night. Like, have you ever played the lottery?
I think I have with my grandparents, but maybe like once or twice. I think I actually did submit it one time.
Yeah, I haven't played it a ton. But occasionally you play, and, you know, my grandmother used to play all the time, and, like, she never won in terms of, like, jackpot.
Yeah.
But she'd win $20 every now and again.
Yeah.
The Wizards ain't even win $20.
We winning nothing.
Last night, you didn't need to win the jackpot. You didn't need to win Wembanyama to get a really excellent player. Just get us in the top 3. Give us leverage. Give us the potential to trade or take maybe also a generational player behind Wembanyama. Or at least like an all-NBA caliber guy.
A Scoot,
a Brandon Miller, or whoever. Nope. They'll take a guy that they hope can be a long-term starter, second or third best player on the team. That'd be great. Who knows? Maybe they get Stephen Curry. He went kind of in this range.
7?
Yeah, he went 7. They're picking 8.
We already lost out on the coin toss or coin flip.
Yeah, that would hurt if the guy who goes 7 winds up being like Stephen Curry. But, you know, you just don't know. I mean, that is the beauty of it, but it's also, you know, there's been more dudes who are awesome that went number 1 than number 2 than number 3, and on down the list, and there is a reason for that.
Yeah.
There is no magical, hey, if you get the 6th pick, you're always going to get a guy. It's not how this works. For better or for worse, hopefully in the Wizards' case this year, it is for a better. Guy who went number 1 overall in the draft, actually 2 guys last night, damn near pulled off a hell of a comeback against a guy who was a very late first-round pick in Nikola Jokic.
Second.
All-time. Oh, that's right. He was the second. I was thinking, was he 28th? Yeah, no, he was the 41st pick in the draft. See, can't even keep that straight. So we'll talk about that next. Plus, we got a whole bunch of other good stuff coming on this here Reggio program. Oh, come on. Give me this thing.
Still to come on the Hoffman Show.
Oh, I love when the fancy stuff doesn't work. What are we doing, Anthony? What are we doing? All right, we're talking to Spirit coach Mark Parsons in just over 15 minutes. He's got the last unbeaten team in the league. How has he done it in his first year, including some really bold, ballsy, I'll say it here, ballsy coaching decisions that he made in the offseason that he's implemented incredibly well. We'll talk to Mark Parsons at 4:30. Then Seth Wickersham wrote the big article with Kime that came out yesterday inside the Josh Harris ownership group and their view of the Commanders with Seth Wickersham at 5. And then we recorded with Matt Ryan today for Take Command. Incredible stuff from Matt. You'll hear it coming up at 6 o'clock. Do not go anywhere.
The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.
The Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Spirit coach Mark Parsons, the last undefeated team in the NWSL, coming up in just a few. By the way, if you're a football fan, soccer fan, Man City up 2-0 on Real Madrid, second leg of their Champions League match. Aggregate now 3-1. So Man City looking like they will head towards the Champions League final. So keep you updated on that in what's trending. Right now, though, we take a look at last night's game between the Nuggets and the Lakers, which really wasn't that intriguing to start and became real intriguing by the end. I will admit it was not intriguing enough that I bailed on it. I was like, I'm not staying up to watch this whole thing anyway. We went and watched some F1 Drive to Survive on Netflix. Wake up this morning and all of a sudden there's a lot of like, wow, what a game, what a incredible, comeback by the Lakers. And I went back and I was like, okay, guess I got to watch it now. And it was really, really impressive to watch the Lakers kind of settle the Nuggets down, figure some things out. They have a monster second half, 38-point third quarter, 34-point fourth quarter. But, obviously they give up 37 and 35 in the first half, and that 38-point third quarter does a lot less damage when you give up 34. However, Anthony, I am the Lakers. I am oddly encouraged by this game. Now, if I'm the Nuggets, I'm not exactly sweating. Nikola Jokic, by the way, what a freaking performance. Had 10 rebounds before 10 minutes had gone in the game. Ultimately, 34, 21, and 14. Legitimately one of the greatest games we will ever see out of any player ever in terms of well-roundedness. Just absurd. 34, 21, and 14. The numbers feel fake. However, they hit a bunch of absolutely Looney Tunes shots in this game. Jokic has, what was his at the end of the first quarter or second quarter? I think it was the end of the first quarter.
End of the third.
Or no, it was the end of the third. That's right. Because Murray had a tough shot, but not a crazy one at the end of the half. Jokic had a just bananas shot, where the one where Anthony Davis literally just laughs because that's all you can do at the end of the third quarter. Murray had one pretty big moment late in the fourth. LeBron's all over him. Shot clock, which, by the way, wackadoodle shot clocks at the beginning of this one, where the shot clock's running down, and he literally just throws the ball at the basket, right? There's some days where you wonder, like, why is it called a free throw? And then you watch certain guys that are bad free throw shooters shoot, and you're like, oh, because he's actually throwing the ball at the basket. It's not, his isn't a shot, his is a throw. And Murray, who's a great shooter, in this moment just throws the ball at the basket, kind of two-hand Chuck style, and it goes down. And at that point, you're just going, what the bleep? And that's a 5-point difference in what turns out to be a 6-point game. So it is certainly encouraging if you're the Nuggets that you're able to get whatever you want offensively. But I do think the Lakers will come back with some changes, with some, modifications defensively, and not quite as ravenous and raucous of a crowd as you have in game one. And by the way, the desperation is always with the team that's down. And if I'm them, like, I feel not great because I don't know that I have an answer for Jokic. But I don't feel as awful as it felt certainly in the first half last night. I don't feel as hopeless as they did hold Denver to 26 in that fourth quarter.
I think that's also just what's inspiring about this Lakers team. The way that they just withstand huge runs by teams. We've seen it, last night. We saw it in the series against the Warriors. Like, teams go on runs, and the Lakers are not ever, like, really rattled or shaken. They have LeBron James, who've been in these situations. They have Anthony Davis, who've been in these situations. They have a couple of veteran guys that can, settle the nerves of the young guys, and then ultimately, try to, get back into the game. And ultimately, that's what we saw yesterday. We saw a Nuggets team get out to a fantastic start. They were clicking on all cylinders, making every shot. They really couldn't miss in the first half. But I think also what people aren't, giving the Nuggets enough credit for, those hustle plays, they were destroying the Lakers on the boards. I think it was like a 36-13 rebound advantage for the Nuggets at the end of the first half. So it's little things like that you do get, you got to tip your hat to when you're talking about the Nuggets. But again, the Lakers settled down, and they got back to playing Lakers basketball. Granted, in the third quarter they couldn't get any stops, but in that fourth quarter you see them, sort of kind of buckle down, settle in. And again, like you said, if I'm the Lakers, I'm encouraged because again, the Nuggets should have blown this Lakers team out. Blown them out if you look at the stat sheet.
It's just hard to do over four quarters.
Exactly. So again, I'm really excited for game 2.
Yeah. So plus minus isn't everything, but D'Angelo Russell was a minus 25 in this game. Okay, he was not very good offensively. He's only 4 of 11, missed all of his threes, didn't get to the free throw line, 3 assists, a turnover, and he's minus 25 in 26 minutes. Everyone else is minus single digits, and the bench guys are plus. Rui actually was plus 10 in this game. He had a very, very good night. He's 8 of 11 from the field. Again, I'm not counting on Rui Hachimura, but if you get a night like that, good. But it does show you, like, okay, the Nuggets are so good offensively that if you have a weak point defensively, which D'Angelo Russell very much is, they will exploit the hell out of it. So the question is, for me, does Darvin Ham have enough like chutzpah in this team, or belief in, chutzpah himself, belief from his team to say, D'Angelo, you might come off the bench. Like, we're going to start Schroeder and Vanderbilt, and we're going to go a little more defensively heavy because we feel like we can score pretty much no matter what against this Nuggets team. We don't need a ton of offense. You're going to come in when they're not quite as potent offensively, when a guy like Jokic goes to the bench, when Murray's on the bench, and we're going to get you post-ups against their backup guards, and, like, we're going to create good situations for you, and I need you to stick with it because we survived the series. We're going to need you to win the NBA Finals. But, like, these are the types of things that happen in a playoff series, and you wonder if a guy like a Troy Brown Jr., yes, that Troy Brown Jr., former Wizard Troy Brown Jr., comes in and as a guy who's a little bit sharper defensively, can you just adjust the margins enough where if you're the Lakers, you feel like you can score at will because the Nuggets are not great defensively. But if you can just not stop them, but contain them, ratchet it down, make it hard, is that enough to turn the tide in your favor? And I think there's some lineup potential things, whether it's, a Troy Brown, more minutes for Jared Vanderbilt, or whether it is, just the other option is like, hey, man, D'Angelo, we believe in you. Go out and play. And you just hope he has a much better game, right? And he goes out and he scores 18 points and has 5 assists and, helps control the tempo and takes some stuff off LeBron, put some pressure on a guy like Jamal Murray, can maybe get him in foul trouble a little bit. No free throws is a big deal. So I think those are kind of the options for the Lakers. We'll obviously see adjustments game 2. We will preview the Eastern Conference Finals game 1 later on in the show. However, coming up next here on the Hoffman Show, well, coming up in 30 minutes, I should say, Seth Wickersham, ESPN The Magazine, senior NFL writer, is going to join us to break down his reporting with John Keim, who joined us yesterday, to talk about the future for the Commanders. But next, Washington Spirit head coach Mark Parsons joins us here on the team at 980.
You can listen to the
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always alive as well on the free Odyssey app. And I'm very excited for I almost call him our next guest, our current guest. He's with us right now. It is Mark Parsons, the head coach of the Washington Spirit. Mark, how we doing?
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me on. Excited to be able to talk, but also excited to talk to you because you've got great energy. And good energy around me is dangerous because I get excited.
Well, so I want to actually start with I don't want to call it our personal history, but like the one time you and I chatted before. I've told this story, I don't think on the radio, but I've certainly talked to this with, I still have obviously friends that are on the team, your players, et cetera. And when people ask me about you, this is what I tell them always. We were in the bowels of Rio Tinto Stadium in Salt Lake City, Utah, back during the NWSL Challenge Cup when I was working for the club. You were the head coach in Portland. And I actually stayed behind after the Spirit had been eliminated to help the league out with some media stuff, be an extra set of hands, an extra camera. And you stopped me in the hallway and were like, Craig, right, from Washington. And I was like, yeah, how the hell do you know who I am? Like, you're the head coach in Portland. I've been working here and we've been in a pandemic. And I always just thought that spoke well of you, that you were someone who paid attention. You were someone that was kind of tuned in to everything that was going on in the league. But I am curious, after all these years, how did you know me?
Yeah, you're setting me up to get your compliment. Well, because
you're on to me, Mark.
I am trying to be present, trying to be aware, and trying to know who people are is important across your organization or your league or other organizations. So that's number one. Number two, people think sometimes I meet people when I'm talking and they say they feel like they're getting interrogated by me sometimes. I am super curious, number one, but I always, if I feel there's a good person out there or someone who does good work, then I dive deep. And I know that I may not come across that person in a day, a week, a month, but it may be a few years. So with you, I just knew that you're someone who does a good job and do great work, and people spoke highly of you. So then I'm being conscious of making sure I know who you are, but know who those people are. I was in London, the US were playing England, and ended up catching up with a couple of my ex-Portland players last year, and a couple of players from the rest of the league just end up talking, getting to talk. And then I start asking questions, same like an interrogation or two, because I'm just always curious about environments and people and who's good or who's not good and what good staff have you worked with before. Short answer is I've heard good things about you, so I wanted to make sure I knew who you were.
Well, I didn't mean that as a full fish for compliment, but I appreciate that, Mark. I really do. So you mentioned you were in Portland. For those that don't know, the wider radio audience here might not be as familiar. Mark was the coach of the Spirit when they had one of their best stretches, kind of the mid-2010s. Left, ultimately goes to Portland. And then you left to go take a job as an international manager. And then you're now back in NWSL. I'm curious, after leaving the league and having that international experience, what did you take out of that? Because you were very successful in NWSL, but what do you bring back from the international experience to the club level that you've implemented? Yeah,
lots of course, small new lessons. I think I hope everyone is that there's lessons. If you have a plan, you work to a plan, then you reflect and review on that plan or idea. You're normally finding areas that you can improve. So lots of new areas to keep improving, but the biggest lessons were the oldest lessons. Being clear on who you are, being clear on your idea of soccer, being clear on how you want to lead and coach, and don't compromise. And in the Netherlands, it was a tough one for me because the culture different, everything, the difference between me coming in the group was big, and they were so great and trying to make sure I feel welcome. I, as a coach, if I see a group is in a place and I'm in a different place, I don't ask them to come all the way to me. I try to get closer to them and then bring them along the journey, which is good. And in this situation, I think I had to be a bit further. The Netherlands brought me in for a certain reason. They needed to rebuild that team and invest and give to the young players. Take risks with how to play football at the top of women's football, and also risk in giving opportunity to the players. Probably was too safe and too cautious and too slow in making it clear on what I wanted and how I wanted it, because I really compromised and wanted to be closer to what they're used to. But that's not a good thing. That's the the biggest lesson, and let me summarize it: know who you are, know how you want to lead, know how you want to coach. Be clear about that. Don't compromise. And when I compromised too much in 2019 in Portland, one of the seasons where I feel like I underperformed, and also compromised too much in the Netherlands. But the experience has given me that biggest lesson. I think we, as a coach, you're always developing how you lead and how you coach and what you believe in, and that gives you a framework to do, but also a framework you've been evolving and building and growing. When you move away from that, you're in new territory. So I'm back in my what's the right word? Humble abode. I'm really in my element right now.
Yeah,
I am with amazing staff, amazing players, hungry. They tasted success, but they want more. And we all know that we have a long way to go. So we're really, hasn't been hard to sell them on process. They believe in process, and it's fun to be around right now.
Mark Parsons, head coach of the Washington Spirit, with us here on the Team 980. That's so interesting, especially given what we've all observed as fans this year, with some of the rather bold moves that they seemed like you were taking from the outside. Specifically, you move, Tara McKeown, very promising, highly drafted forward, put her at center back, which, I know you've talked about in interviews, but that confidence, is that something that to do that, sell it to the players, sell it to the rest of the team, some of the other tactical, whether it's position changes or changing formations, is that something you feel is confident doing in 2019 versus going through those experiences and doing those things now?
Yeah, so it starts with like a fundamental principle that I have. It's about helping people, helping players, help individuals be their absolute best. That starts with conversation on top qualities. What is the player's top qualities? We can talk off the pitch as well, but I stay focused on soccer. And then as a coach, how do you put them in a position to show those top qualities and also build a team, an identity in principles in how you attack and defend to help players get into those positions and show those qualities? So I look at Dorian Bailey, of course, who's been a midfielder, played a bit of fullback as well, but we feel that her at fullback suits her best qualities, her top strengths. With Tara, it's the same. She has this desire. The first thing that I saw analysing the games is she will put her body on the line to put the ball in the net, or defending set pieces, stop the ball going in the net. Tara had a conversation with the staff from last year, Ange, Mike, and Mark, about position, and those guys had the discussion. Listen, we see some things in you that you could be a centre back. How do you feel about that? And Tara was open. And when I come on board, that was my first conversation. I said, Tara, how do you feel about this? I've analysed you. I think you are a good forward, but I also think you could be a top centre back because of this, this, and this. And Tara, the thing that drove it is Tara was very open to that, and her mindset, coachability is superb. I would say that moving Christine Sinclair from a number 9 to a number 10, moving Sophia Smith from a winger who only had got told to be on the sideline to come inside and play closer to goal. Yeah, these things I've done way more of. Like, it's small. It's Sink's best quality is final pass and arriving late into the box to score goals. So putting her in a position that she can do that more. Same with Sophie Smith, for example. Principle is, what's their best quality? How do you put them in a position to show and bring their best quality? Dorian, it's a small adjustment. Tara, that's a big one. I haven't done that before. And it's about quality and giving the players the chance to not think too much about performing. They do certain things instinctively. They do certain things that they've trained all their lives. Tara loves to stop people. When I watched her as a striker, the pressing ability was incredible. She wants to stop people. She also loves to attack people, and she gets to do that as a centre-back with the ball at her feet. So, it's best quality, put them in it, but I'm one piece of that. The player is the biggest piece. Are they open to it? Yes or no? And the same, actually, we're saying with some of these players with positional changes. What I did say, once they said yes, let's do it, I said there's one important thing. After a week or a month when it's hard, or a bad game or 2 bad games, we can't squirm away from this. It's got to be multiple months commitment, because we won't see any results of all the work for multiple months. We need 4 or 5 league games, 6 league games, until we really know if this is going the right direction. And I also did that because I know doubt will sneak in. It's the same with talking about Sanchez in her normal position, or Sam Starr in her normal position. When things aren't perfect, the team's not perfect, doubt comes in. So in a positional change, doubt will be big. And that's probably the part I was a bit non-negotiable. If we do it, we commit for multiple months, and then we can review. That's I think a long answer, but really honest answer about how we've looked at this.
No, I appreciate that, and I hope the audience does too, because it's something that's universal to coaching across sports. Those principles apply to, things that you could do with different basketball players, football player, American football players, et cetera. So I think that's fascinating and very well articulated. Your captain, or I guess one of your captains, Andy Sullivan, had a quote that's gone viral over the weekend. Your team is fit as hell, was the quote from Andy in a halftime interview. You guys have brought in a legendary strength and conditioning coach in Don Scott, as someone who's also dabbling in that world. Like, I've been aware of Don forever. But I'm curious the difference that makes for you, and especially Mark. We could probably talk about this forever, but this will be the last thing I ask you here. So, across global women's football right now, there's like an ACL injury, epidemic. There's a lot of questions about the strength and conditioning role and players' fitness. So to have someone like Don and know that you can play the style you play and that your players feel good and are up to it, knock on wood here, of course, but, what kind of confidence does that give you, and how is the investment that the team has made and that Don has made in these players worked? And then also, how do you balance the needs from Dawn and her staff with what you would like to do on a technical side?
Yeah. Number one, Dawn is the best. That's a fact.
All right, thanks, Mark. That'll do.
For a fact. Actually, I had a conversation with Dawn maybe yesterday, just talking about some things, and I actually said some of my same answers here to your points and your questions. And I loved Andy at halftime. The commentator, I loved her answer. It was fit as hell. So this is what I said to Dawn as well. We're not fit yet. We really aren't. We aren't fit. We're on a good path. We do not see a improvement in players individually or collectively in 3 or 4 months. I've said multiple times to my staff privately, I love the journey, I love the process. But if we're already moving at this pace, imagine 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. Also, secondary to that off seasons are really big for players. I've seen players transform themselves. When you got games coming thick and fast, it's hard. So actually, we are in a good place. My opinion is we aren't that fit. We're on track. The other thing I said to Dawn was that Kirsty, Adam, Eric, a lot of people are working very hard. So Dawn's role here is more director. She's done an incredible job of helping lead the recruitment, but help also lead the strategy. We don't have Dawn on the road. We don't have Dawn on the pitch with us as much. It's the staff she's brought in. She does an incredible job in being connected to me and over communicating with me about all areas. But I'm also I'm trying to push other people into the hemisphere of what Dawn does, that Kirsty Hicks, Adam Forrest, Eric Marchak on the medical side. A lot of people, and it's not just quality, it's quantity, that the investment Michelle has made. And Dawn is leading these guys to really support the all-round performance. The work they are doing, when I talk about long-term, the work they're doing, Dawn has introduced concepts through her staff that I've never even heard of in women's soccer, and I've been around the top level for 10 years. This stuff takes time. So I'm happy, I'm excited, we're in a good place, but I think we're going to reap the rewards later. I think it will be another 3-4 months, end of the season. And I think next year we're going to be in a new place. And just a bit of context, like there's a couple of teams in the league. There's one in particular I think have been building for multiple years that are in a great place. We're just getting started, and we got work to do. Number 2 is I've really landed on my feet. When I say actually maybe this is why I really wanted to be here with this team, is I knew Dawn was here and the staff that she was bringing in. I know, same in Portland, with the style of soccer, you have to be fit. You have to be committed to the work rate. In Portland, we ended up having the lowest amount of injuries over the last few years, and also freshest of availability of players. and the fitness piece was key. I was lucky to have good staff there. Here, Michelle's investment has never been seen in women's football. I told everyone in preseason and the off season. Now we're kind of right. It's okay. This guy actually is not crazy. She is doing things no one else has done. But my tone here is we're just getting started. This is the start of a long journey. The players, the staff are doing great work. But it comes back to mindset, actually. We talked about some player positional change. The players are so open to pushing, so open to investing in the long term and the medium term, knowing we've got to win games in the short term. I'm really excited by our start with building some good habits, but we've got work to do in all areas, but especially in this area as well. I'm excited to see what we're going to look like in 12 months.
Last thing for Mark Parsons, I will say, I'm glad we got we're just getting started, some pithy things in there, because now they put fit as hell on t-shirts, Mark, and now you're we just wait until we see. And I guess we're going to have to do fit as hell t-shirts 2.0 in 6 months.
Yeah, I'm trying not to be like party pooper. I'm just always realistic. I love the energy and I love the hype.
You are the only undefeated team left in the league, which isn't a bad start.
Yeah, but no, we just had our review meeting today. We managed to have some 2 days off, and we got a lot to improve. It's just a reality. We had a review, and the players are giving. I'm showing a clip, and the players are finding more problems than me. We've got areas to improve, but I think the context is we have had a good start. We are in a good place. We are performing at a good level, but that's in comparison to other teams. So we're not comparing ourselves to anyone else. We're on a journey here that is special, and it's for the long term. And we've made moves to invest in the future of our team with staffing, but also in how we're scouting and recruiting and draft picks we got for the future. But every single day we're focused on the present. And yeah, we're working hard, but we really honestly have a lot of work to do.
So with that, this year is going to be challenging. The good thing about having good players is you have good players. The bad news in a World Cup year is a lot of them leave in the middle of the year. You've obviously got another month and change until your U.S. players depart, but also a player like Marissa Shiva might be gone. Gabby Carley you expect to be gone. To Canada, I'm probably missing some as well. How do you keep the level, keep the intensity, keep the results when those players leave?
Yeah, it started in January. You don't get ready for it a week before, 2 weeks before. We're really transparent, over communicate with players, but even some of them sometimes. I don't know, Steve Jobs said you can only join the dots looking back. It's hard to see them looking forward. It's something like that. So we had an experience 3 or 4 weeks ago. We went on the road to Chicago. We took everyone. We played a training game. We were supposed to play at midday. Then we had to move it to 9:30. Rain, hailstorm. We ended up playing 10v10 for the last 10 minutes because both teams just had took a small knock. And in that moment, that right then and there, I'm sure it entered everyone's mind. What are we doing here on Sunday morning after a Saturday night game? And then we play Orlando. And those same players that were playing against Chicago played against Orlando and were incredible and had a great performance. Now, it was only a little bit better than Chicago, but the Chicago experience helped us get ready. Gotham, Challenge Cup Game 1 away at Gotham against a team that went very experienced with their lineup, with a lot of they had more NWSL caps on that in their 11 that day than I think we have in our whole squad. And it was hard for us. We got young players coming off the pitch against Gotham going, wow, that was a shock. That was a humbling experience. But then we played Chicago in the training game, and then we played Orlando in the Challenge Cup. Small steps. This started in January. In January, every time we played preseason game, we played 2 preseason games. We always gave everyone as many maximum minutes to coach soccer, to develop soccer, to build the fitness, but to build the experience. And, Nicole or Lena and Savannah, who have played higher up in these games, they just came out of college. Simone Charlie didn't play for 2 or 3 years for me in Portland. Bella Bixby didn't play for 3 years. Kelly Hubley didn't play for 2-3 years. These players are all now playing in championship games, winning trophies or fighting for trophies. Elizabeth Ball at centre back for Kansas last year. Celeste Bourret, they didn't play for a long time. Now, back then, probably wasn't as productive of building these experiences quick enough, which meant it took them longer. I've learned from that. It started in January. And even players sometimes, some players didn't get as much load on Saturday against Angel City. They did extra small-sided. And it could be, well, was this just extra small-sided? How will this help us for this week? Well, actually, no, times 10 small-sided for 10 minutes over the next 10 weeks is going to make a big difference, marginal gains. We're investing in everyone. We care about everyone. We still got to pick a team each week, and of course, that's challenging. We are pushing to be as ready as we can be for that World Cup period that you're describing. But it started in January, and sometimes it's hard to see the dots looking forward. Is this really going to add up? But we've got no choice. We're trusting the process. We're investing in the process. And during the World Cup, we'll find out.
Mark Parsons, head coach of the unbeaten Washington Spirit. Last unbeaten team in the league, but as he said, just getting started. And if you'd like to go out, Spirit have a ton of home games coming up in late May and early June. So great chance to get out to Audi Field and see a really fun side do their thing. Mark, this was great. I have a zillion more things I could ask you, but we're out of time, so we'll have to just have you back at some point in the near future.
Yeah, one quick thing, because I am being real with journey and process where we're at. But one thing we have got is a really fun team. This team has energy. This team is ready to take on the world. And they do it with a smile. I'm enjoying that as well. I'm normally a more experienced squad and the senior people like me who are always finding something to fix. This group is fun. Come and see this group. They're ready to take on the world. And when that stadium out of field has energy in it, anything's possible. And we're enjoying the ride at the moment.
No doubt. Mark, appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, Seth Wickersham is next here on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always alive as well on the free Odyssey app. 5 o'clock each and every day, we bring in an expert on the day's top story, and today we bring in someone who wrote it.
Today's top story, from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Seth Wickersham, senior writer for ESPN, co-wrote the article with John Keim uncovering a prospectus from the Harris Group that gives a lot of detail on what they think the Washington Commanders franchise could be once they take over from the Snyders. And Seth joins us now. Seth, welcome to the show, man. And by the way, congrats on all the tremendous work over the last couple of months.
Hey, my pleasure. Good to be with you guys.
So I always like to start when I read a story like this with asking the author, like, what did you take out of it? Because there is so much information, so much data, so many numbers in this. You finally get done writing, you and John submit the story, and then you're sitting there thinking like, wow, we just wrote about all these things. What's like the main thing that lingers at the top of your head after working on this for as long as you guys were?
Well, this one kind of came together quickly. Like, I was able to get the document, and John was able to help with his, institutional knowledge and reporting, and we put it together relatively quickly. I think that look, the main things that stick out, and hopefully this came across in the story, is number one, that it exists, right? I mean, usually when NFL teams come up for sale, there is no need to produce a prospectus for prospective, limited partners. It's because the people who are buying these teams are so unbelievably wealthy that they don't need help. They don't need to bring in other investors. And so the fact that this exists and you're able to get this sort of unfiltered window into raw data and numbers and revenue, I thought was fascinating, because you just don't get it very often for an NFL team. And the other thing, of course, is that there's the argument that the prospectus makes that the state of Virginia might give up to $1.5 billion in incentives to help the team build a stadium in Virginia. I mean, I think those are the two things that stood out, because I would love to know more about where the team got that $1.5 billion figure for, because it's multiple times more than the package that was vetoed last year in the Virginia state legislature.
Right. And part of that veto is obviously to Snyder personally, but it also, it doesn't fit the kind of the mood of the room, if you will. And we see that last night. Tempe, Arizona rejects anything to keep the Phoenix Coyotes down there in Arizona. We've seen plenty of other public money requests go begging. So I'm curious, whether it's talking to league sources, whether it's whatever you could glean from the document. Do you have any idea why they think Virginia would play ball, and certainly play ball at that kind of level?
I don't. I think that it's, clearly, look, there's going to be a Harris bump. And, the prospectus, makes that argument that, when the team changes ownership, there is going to be a tidal wave of revenue and sponsorships and a reset with that franchise. Now, that said, we're not bringing Elvis back here. I don't know what type of human could possibly get $1.5 billion in public funds out of a state, especially Virginia, but maybe, who knows? I mean, you look at some of the numbers that have crept up. The Buffalo Bills Stadium, the Tennessee Titans Stadium, and maybe they think, given, the fan base that's just hungry for a reason to love that team and to want to love that team again, that they think that they might be able to work out that partnership. I mean, it makes it very clear. The Harris document makes it clear that it's the team that believes this, but the Harris document put it in there as part of their argument as well.
Seth Wickersham, ESPN, with us here on the Hoffman Show. So one thing that stuck out to me, Seth, it's a minor detail, but I'm curious as someone who's been reporting on this process throughout, is the prospectus is prepared by the Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment Group, which we now know David Blitzer has joined Josh Harris in this pursuit. Blitzer, obviously his partner with the Sixers and the Devils. But for a long time in this process, Blitzer was either not a part of it or wasn't known to be a part of it. This prospectus, by the way, that you guys got from March, according to your story. How long has Blitzer been involved here, and how has the ownership group kind of changed over the course of Harris's pursuit of the team, obviously as this prospectus either worked or didn't to attract new limited partners?
Yeah, that I don't know, but I do know that look, I mean, he's bringing in a lot of them, as you know. I mean, it's more than a dozen. And so there is still something about that lore of an investment in an NFL team and the appreciation that they get and, you know, being in the juggernaut and the force that is the NFL in America.
So for the stadium, that's probably the other, you know, obviously the Virginia piece we talked about, but the stadium in general, one of the other interesting things in the story is the timelines, and on some level competing timelines. As you've talked to folks for this story and throughout this process, you know, you have the 2027 date where the lease is up with, or the agreement is up with Prince George's County. You have some folks in your story thinking it might take till at least 2031. Where do you kind of fall on the likelihood of earlier or later on a new stadium?
So, you know, anyone who's looked at my portfolio knows that I'm probably not the most savvy reader of financial documents. So I asked people who are familiar with these types of documents, both within the league offices and beyond, for their opinion about it, just so that I could try to understand more and understand some context. And when I read in the document that they thought, you know, they could double local revenue by 2031 with a new stadium, more than double it, you know, come close to $500 million. I thought, man, there's no way that the ownership group's going to want to, like, you know, keep playing in FedEx Field that long. I mean, they'll get frustrated. Then I talked to people, and they were like, yeah, that's a rosy figure, 2031, because right now they have no land, they have no deal, and they have no financing. And that stuff takes time, and it is hard. And unless you're like Stan Kroenke, who can buy the land in Inglewood, California, and, you know, presumably with a little bit of league assistance, write a check for the entire SoFi Stadium, which ended up costing, you know, more than $6 billion. You know, these things take a while. And, you know, look at the Vikings, for instance. I mean, from the moment that deal came to be to when that stadium opened. And I think that, you know, there's people who think basically that, like, by 2031, that's if everything goes well, but we should be prepared for it to take, you know, close to a decade.
Wow. It's so wild, because I think
and
so many
one of the
us,
things,
yeah.
And in the story, or in the prospectus, you know, Harris makes a key point of saying, look, we're investing $88 million in, you know, making the stadium and the experience more fan and player friendly. And talking about investing up to $100 million in immediate infrastructure repairs needed in the stadium. And I think that that's one of the things that the people who read the document for me really took away, was that, like, yes, there's going to be some goodwill and incredible emotion when Harris takes over this team, but it underscores a bit how much Dan Snyder has not only hurt the team from an optics perspective, but in fact kind of driven it into the ground. And I know that anyone who goes to FedEx Field, that's not a surprise to them, but it still was shocking to some of the people who read the story, who read the prospectus.
Seth Wickersham, ESPN.com with us, ESPN the magazine, one of their senior writers. So that's actually what I wanted to ask you about next, because the headline of the story kind of insinuates that there's just going to be a bump because Dan is gone. Like magic, voila, clouds clear, excellent sunshine, rainbows. And, you know, obviously a headline is a headline. You start to read, and there is this incredible detail about the estimate of nearly $100 million, or maybe even more than $100 million into whether it's the practice facility, you know, marketing things, FedEx Field, whatever that money goes to. And I'm just curious, like, to kind of color in the details there, how much do they think just merely getting rid of Snyder will bring in new sponsors and take some of the people that have stepped away back into the fold versus, hey, here's our list? Because this is a radio segment we've all done here in town, Seth, of like, what's the number one thing Josh Harris has to do? It sounds like he's got a list. So what are kind of the active things versus the passive boost that he's going to get by not being Dan Snyder?
Well, they expect something immediate. And Jason Wright, obviously the team president, told that to John Keim on the record, that everybody in the building, Snyder's included, know that there are people who have not done business with them right now because of the ownership, who are eager to do business with them with new partners. And, what that looks like, I don't know. But again, the Harris document places a big bet on himself. And obviously, like every sports owner, there's good things and there's bad things about them, whatever it might be. And one of the things that I think that most people believe that Josh Harris has a good record of doing is making the fan experience better, making those teams be teams that fans want to go to. And he cites the ticket sales of the 76ers and how they went from 27th in the league to 5th. And, he's clearly betting on himself and his ability and his resume in doing that to provide some juice into this team and the entire experience of being a Washington Commanders fan.
So let's rewind all the way back to the last story that you worked on 78 years ago Friday. That's just how time seems to go these days. We were actually talking to your colleague, Don Van Natta, on this very show when the Snyder announcement came out on Friday. And it was such a weird juxtaposition because in talking to Don, it's like, oh, this could be a huge problem. And then Dan puts out the statement saying like, no, we're good. We've agreed. We've signed it. Can't wait for this to be over. I'm curious over the weekend as you continue to report, do we have any clearer idea of what agreement might exist between the league and Snyder about the Mary Jo White report?
No, but I think that the interesting thing is that both things can be true. Like in our report on Friday, we actually wrote that league executives and owners were optimistic that a deal could kind of be announced and get done soon. Now, others weren't so optimistic about it. So it was like these two things were happening. And it's my opinion that I think that as we reported in last October, that Dan was threatening to blow up the league and use dirt that he had accumulated on Roger Goodell and owners as a way to keep his team. And that went over so poorly. Look, within days of that report, Jim Irsay comes out saying, basically we need to find a pathway to get rid of this guy. Then within weeks, like 2 weeks, I think after that, Snyder announces that they're exploring a sale. But at the same time, he's still been trying to hang on to his team. And I think that as things have shifted and he's come to the realization that this club does not want him anymore, he's trying to use that, the desire that they have to get rid of him so quickly to try to get little things that he wants, including legal indemnifications like the Washington Post has reported on, and including, like we reported on, a limited release, public release of the Mary Jo White report, something that, obviously would be less damning towards him than a full release of the Mary Jo White report. And I don't think that any of those things have really changed. I think that, as this happens, and this is going to be an atypical process because of the volume of limited partners, and the finances of this worries league executives and owners. Not so much, though, that they don't want to get rid of Dan. But as this process moves along slowly, I think that Dan will continue to see what he can get out of it.
So that's kind of my question, though, is with the announcement Friday, and it's not just that they announced it publicly, like he signed something. He's like, yep, this is good. Whatever terms are in what he signed. Did he just lose leverage? Like, it doesn't make sense that he would give that up if he's still trying to negotiate. Because now if the finance committee approves things, like, he's done. He's got no control left. At least that's the way I'm kind of reading the news here. Am I missing something, or is he just giving up the last bit of leverage that he has outside of kind of whining about it?
Well, I'm not sure that he ever had leverage doing it.
Fair,
you know, I mean,
fair.
one of the things our stories talked about is that I think it was the second or third paragraph. It was very, you know, people doubted that this was actually leverage that he had. It was just something that he was trying to do, and he was trying to do it as of in the days leading up to that announcement and the morning of that announcement. And so, you know, I think that Dan, look, owners have told me over and over again that they don't expect him to go away without a fight. And they can put out press releases, they can make announcements, they can do this. But, you know, and this is their words, knowing the level of vindictiveness and, you know, resentment that he has towards a lot of these people and towards this situation, nothing that he does or tries to do is going to surprise them.
Do you think that is rational or irrational fear?
It's a great question. The NFL is a strange business, you know, and I've written about it for a long time at the very highest levels, you know, ownership and league circles. Don Van Natt and I have done a lot of stories about it. And it's a fascinating collection of people who, you know, in some ways can't stand one another and in other ways never want to get divorced from one another when you talk about the ownership group. So it's a very interesting collection of people, some people who are self-made billionaires, other people who inherited their teams, you know, from family, other people who, you know, bought in to the league when it wasn't nearly the juggernaut that it is now. Legacy families, you know, you just have a strange collection of minds there. And so it's hard to tell if something's rational or irrational. Usually that group, though, moves very slowly on anything except things that will generate instant revenue.
Well, I've talked about this with Don for at this point 3 years since you guys have started reporting on this, or I guess 2 years or 2.5 years since you guys started. But you know, I don't get why they didn't kick him out long ago, because kicking him out would generate instant revenue, which is pointed out in this latest story. But that's a you know, protect their own longer conversation. Seth Wickersham's our guest, of course, from ESPN.
Yeah, it was, and to be honest, I mean, that was one of the reasons why Don and I and Tisha Thompson did that story in October, because it was, how is Dan Snyder surviving? And that was, you know, those were the conclusions we came up with. And remember, even in October, it was, before that story came out, it was unclear whether there was the appetite to remove him. But then when he went after their own, you know, that there is a bond in that group, even if it's a strange bond. And when he went after their own, I think that it really offended a lot of people, and it made a lot of the things that he has done and has been accused of, I think in the owner's eyes, like that much worse. But I think it was just obvious that his days as a partner were over, and you know, he announced, you know, within weeks after that piece.
Right. So last thing I'll ask you, Seth, real quick, or last topic, is Harris coming in. And you used a phrase earlier that I want to circle back to, which is like the and there's one in the story as well, that the financing is creative, that, you know, this financing is kind of scary to NFL owners. Can you explain to an extent me, but also certainly the audience, why?
Because they are used to single, with few exceptions, like you have, you know, the Rooney family, the Davis family. Obviously, I reported on Tom Brady, who's in deep discussions to buy into that team. You know, for the most part, though, these guys don't take on a lot of limited partners. I mean, they are owned by the owner. And we think of NFL teams as these huge kind of conglomerates when they're actually kind of more run like family businesses. And this is atypical because Josh Harris is a fabulously wealthy human who isn't wealthy enough to write a $6 billion check. And so the vetting process and the financing and the worry that if the team were to ever run into financial problems, I mean, obviously, when Stan Kroenke pitched the stadium in Inglewood to his fellow partners, I believe this is what we wrote in the story. I don't have it in front of me, though. I believe it was a $2.7 billion price tag on that stadium, and it ended up costing more than double that. I mean, these things are expensive overtures. The hardest thing as an owner is to get a stadium done. And so there's a concern there that if they run into any hiccups along the way, that this financing package won't be able to just spend their way out of it. And I think that, like, that's the issue. But that said, I think it's going to be a surprise if by week 1 the Washington Commanders don't have Josh Harris as their owner.
Yeah, I guess the last part B then at the end of that is, like you say, be surprised by week 1. Do you think it'll be much sooner than that, or is it going to be pretty close to the start of the season?
I don't know. You know, they can call. I think that it depends on when the vetting is done and owners have enough of a comfort level, or at least know what the problems are, that they can move forward with this. And they can approve him at any time. They can call a conference call or a Zoom at any moment and approve this transaction. Obviously, there was some hope that it was going to happen in time for the March meetings, which I think were in Phoenix.
Right.
That didn't happen. There was a hope that it might happen by, next week in Minneapolis. That's not going to happen. But like I said, I do think that, like, it's hard to imagine the season starting next year and Dan Snyder still owning that team.
Seth Wickersham, ESPN, fantastic work. Thanks so much for your time here on the show. And I'm sure we will be talking to you again in the not-too-distant future, the way you and Don are cranking things out these days.
Thanks, man. I appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Seth Wickersham, everybody, with us on the Hoffman Show. All right, here's what we got for the rest of this here radio program. Never read the comments. We're going to do that next. So it's our Wednesday tradition. We dive deep into the darkest regions of the internet, pull out your thoughts and comments, react to them live here on the radio. Then you do not want to miss at 6 o'clock the conversation we had this morning, we being myself and Logan Paulson, with his former teammate, the former MVP of the NFL and CBS Sports' newest NFL analyst, Matt Ryan. We go story time with Matt Ryan. We talk football with Matt Ryan. We ask Matt Ryan why he's doing the media thing now. Now is the right time for him because he hasn't technically retired. So we got really great stuff with Matt Ryan airing at 6 p.m. That's all still to come, so don't go anywhere. Here on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, the free Odyssey app, and streaming live on YouTube.
Daniel Snyder has agreed to sell the...
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Thanks again to Seth Wickersham for joining us. Our chat with Matt Ryan coming up at the top of the hour. What was it like to go against Ron Rivera all them years in Carolina when Matt was in Atlanta? We talk about that and so much more coming up at the top of the hour. But first, it is time, Anthony, to disregard the advice that people say all the time. Hey, just write your column, move on, post your YouTube video, move on. Whatever you do, don't spend too much time in the comments. It's a bad news bears situation. But Anthony, each and every Wednesday on this here radio and live digital streaming program, what do? We read those comments, baby. I thought you were going to bat out like a Ric Flair woo after that. I thought that's what you were building to.
No, I wasn't going there.
All right. We got a bunch of great ones. But, Anthony, first, if I don't plug in my laptop, then we're gonna have a problem. The stream will die. So, I'm gonna need you to stall for like 20 seconds here so I can go get my charger from over there. Ready, set, go!
All right, guys. Anthony Haney hijacking the Hoffman Show. I'm really excited about these comments. A lot has been happening the last couple of days, and even going back to last week. So, let's see what these comments have to necessarily to say. I actually haven't looked at any of the comments, so I think this is going to be Craig narrating and taking full control of everything.
I'm sure what you said was great.
Oh, you weren't listening?
No, I really should have turned my mic off so I had the speakers on in here. I realized as I ran over there, probably looking like a gigantic doofus running off camera.
Yep.
Not exactly wearing athletic shoes today.
Oh, yeah.
Shoes aren't pretty nice, though.
They are indeed.
Anthony, what do I got on the feet?
That boy got on some off-whites, baby.
Yeah, we do. Yeah,
yes,
we do
sir.
today. That I should have made it so I could hear. But we didn't. But anyway, here we are. So we got kind of two main topics in Never Read the Comments today. One is kind of this bigger sales story that we just talked about with Seth Wickersham and comments on the story, our interview with Keim yesterday, with Don Van Natta, et cetera, over the past couple of days. And then we had a bunch of comments on some of the roster building talk that we did last week. We had a segment that was kind of titled, "Why is Everyone Mad at Ron Rivera?" Which, thought that might get a few comments, and here we are. All right, Anthony, first one, we're going to go, this one was 4 minutes ago. 4 minutes ago. So it tells you on Wednesdays, get your comments in. Sometimes they wind up at the top of the list because they're very recent. It's a little cheat code if you want that. Just make sure you watch the video and such. But Apollo Burnett says they will sell the land in Maryland immediately and move on. Players live close to Ashburn, so that's a keeper. The land will double, triple in value over the next few decades. Neither D.C. or Maryland have made an honest play for the Commander Stadium. They will be called the Washington Rough Riders next year. Well, the last part's easy. No, they won't. And the first part's frankly easy. No, they won't. And I think this goes to what we just talked about with Seth, right? Where there's a lot of folks around the league who apparently think this stadium's not getting done for the better part of a decade. Like, we're talking 2031, 2032, 2033 before we have a Commander Stadium that is not at Landover. The thing that's going to change first is not the name of the team, which we'll get to in some of these comments, but the name of the stadium is likely to change before that. So I do think that, the idea that the players live in Ashburn and they want to keep that there potentially is kind of irrelevant. Like, a lot of teams don't practice close. Like, we were talking to Matt. I was talking to Matt before we started recording today, and he lives pretty far from the where the practice facility is because he wanted to live in a certain part of Atlanta when he was down there. And other players lived closer to the facility. Some live closer to the stadium. Like, it's just part of being an adult. Like, sometimes you live close to work and sometimes you don't. But for the stadium, like, you don't really care how close you are because you're only there for home games 8 or 9 times a year, 10 times a year if you include the preseason. You're not making massive adjustments. It's not in the top 10, 15 factors, closeness to the practice facility, unless you want to build kind of a compound. Like, you do it based off, will Virginia give you $1.5 billion? Will you be able to build the kind of facility that you want? Can you get the proper permitting? those are the kinds of things that are being considered, not how close is it to the practice facility. I do think it's a good point, though, that neither D.C. or Maryland have made an honest play for the Commander Stadium. D.C.'s kind of, but it's been internal squabbling and politics and bureaucracy and red tape that they've been trying to fight through. Maryland, though, is ready to play ball. Governor Wes Moore already starting to meet with people. And it said, we want to keep them in PG County. So I think those are coming. The question is, are the voters ultimately going to vote for public money? Are they going to be okay with raised taxes to pay for a stadium, to keep the stadium in their state or their jurisdiction in the district's case to move it here? Those are the big questions. All right. From GB. That's pie in the sky. Danny Boy leaving won't improve the FedEx dump. I don't think you spend $6.05 billion then move to the Virginia Boonies for short-term game. It'll be interesting, but I'm betting the ownership group is smarter than Dan. No kidding. Commander's name is Snyder's, and they should at least drop it. Makes me want to throw up every time I hear it. I know this has been like the Twitter conversation. The name thing is so far down on my list. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. All I'll say about it is this. If they win a bunch of games in the next 2-3 years before they could realistically think about changing it again, you're going to feel very differently. You're not going to care. You will proudly be ready to go.
We are the Commanders.
You might even give it a maybe. Probably not. But you'll be fine with it. We'll have fun with it. It will never be a great name. Fine. What is a great name anyway? What's in a name? But it's because you associate it currently with losing in the Commanders or losing in Dan Snyder. Once you associate it with winning, if they are awesome with Sam Howell or they bomb out and draft Caleb Williams and Caleb Williams becomes Mr. Commander, you'll be psyched about it. Like, that's how that works. That's how emotion works. I know, providing logic to emotion is not really something that is effective, but like that's the reality. And also the move to potentially Virginia is not about short term. Like, the fan base has shifted over the past decade, 2 decades, and there's a lot of fans in Virginia. And I think making it, if Virginia is willing to play ball based off their politics, it's not about short-term game. People will go to Virginia, just like people from Virginia, where the fan base has grown over the last 2 decades, a.k.a. the thing I just said, go to Maryland to go to FedEx Field. It'll work in reverse. Maryland folks and D.C. folks would do it. You'll go to support the team because you're a fan, and while you would love to have it be more convenient, and there might be not as many games you go to, like the game that's less convenient for you as a Marylander or a D.C. native becomes more convenient for someone in Virginia, or, however that equation shifts depending on where it is. So it's not short-term game. It's not having to pay an extra $1.5 billion if that number is truly attainable. But we'll see. There's a lot of negotiating. And by the way, they will improve FedEx, but there's only so much that they're going to do, especially if they can be there for the next decade. Because they can. Here's the thing, Anthony. If they improve FedEx, and let's say they put $100 million in it, but those improvements bring in an extra $500 million, you just made $400 million. Those things pay for themselves, even if it's a short term. So sometimes the math do be mathin', even on this show, with our math abilities. This is fun. Anthony, I'm curious what you think of this. It's kind of been floating in the back of my head. Calvin says, wonder what Philly thinks of Harris buying the competition. That seems like a small conflict of interest. Obviously, it's an NFL team versus an NBA team, and his NHL team is a New York City adjacent team up in New Jersey, kind of market-wise. It is a little weird that he's going to own the Sixers, the biggest rival to the basketball team here. Like, he and Leonsis are rivals, but they own teams in the same city. It's a little funky.
I mean, has it really been all that of a rivalry as of late?
It's kind of like the Joel Embiid graphic. It's not a rivalry because all they do is kick our ass.
Exactly so.
There's that. It is kind of funky. I just thought about this. Right now, who's playing in the Western Conference Finals in the NBA?
Got the Nuggets and the Lakers.
You know who owns the Nuggets?
No.
Stan Kroenke, who owns the Los Angeles Rams.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's not totally unprecedented. It is just kind of weird. And I will say, like, it's probably weirder for Philly because they've had him, and also he's a DC guy. So there's that. Back to the temporary updates. And I thought this was an interesting comment overall from Willis Lee doing our Never Read the Comments segment here on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. We read your YouTube comments. which you can leave at youtube.com/@Craig Hoffman or youtube.com/@theteam980. Willis says it will be interesting to see what their 8-year temporary fixes and updates to the current stadium and training camp experiences will be. But according to the quick uptick in revenue post-sale completion, I know that I will be buying 5 jerseys and a few T-shirts that I've been holding off on buying because of the cold shivers I would get thinking about the fact that some of the revenue of whatever I bought would be going to Snyder, and that was enough for me to not spend my money. I can't wait to start getting my gear. And I think there's a lot of fans like Willis who, whether it's like I don't want to give money to Snyder or just like there's a general like shame about wearing the Commander's name because you're like, I can't support that guy publicly, even if I watch every game and want them to win and listen to Sports Talk Radio and podcasts and the whole deal. And that's where the instantaneous uptick will go. They will have a massive, and they already did, right? The day, I can't remember if it was the Friday one or the April date when they announced the sale was like really happening, but they had one of their biggest season ticket days they've had in a decade, right? They're going to sell a bunch of merch, and they're not going to, like, there will be third-hand sites, if you will, third-party sites selling, like, Buy Dan, and just like, you know, Old Ox did the beer, and there's plenty of Buy Dan shirts and all those kinds of things. But just Commanders gear, people will be like, all right, I'm in. Let's do it. There will be people that buy custom, you know, Josh Harris jerseys, which will be pretty funny to see at FedEx Field this fall. But, like, stuff like that's going to happen. Hopefully someone listening right now got the idea from me. You're welcome.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think week 1, preseason, I feel like once everything is finalized and Dan is officially out the door, like has nothing to do with the team, I feel like you're just going to see so many sponsors. I mean, maybe the team will get sponsors back that they previously lost. Obviously, they're going to get ticket holders, you know, buying season tickets again. So I just think the rollout leading up to the start of the season, I think is going to be very interesting. And we're going to see a lot of fans coming out of the woodworks, man.
So if you get a custom Josh Harris jersey, what number do you put on the back? Do you put 23 for the year that he bought it? Do you put... Can you see if they can do a 6.5 or a 6 for $6 billion that he spent, or 65? 65 is not real. It's like it's supposed to 6.05. I think you just do 6, right?
Yeah. 6. A number?
I feel like you go 6.
Yeah.
I wish if you could get someone who knew how to do it, like, hey, skilled seamstress or seamster, someone good with a sewing machine. You just buy a letter B, and you do Harris, and then you do 6B.
Yeah, that would be smooth.
Or just, what number would you like? Dollar signs.
Money talks.
Money talks. Money's going to get Josh Harris this team. Last one, kind of on this topic. This was obviously on the Keim interview. Build it, and we will come. I wondered if we'd ever see Snyder gone. Great show, and love whenever Keim is on. He deserves to cover at least a playoff run. John Keim deserves a championship game. John Keim deserves a Super Bowl. And then John Keim deserves to retire.
He said he's been covering it since 1994.
He has.
Man.
You were -2, right?
Yeah. I wasn't born yet. I don't think I was thought of.
I was 4. I worked with John for the better part of 5 years. I was 4 years old when he started covering this team. That's crazy. And I'm 33. All right. Comments on the Ron Rivera stuff. And there are some people that kind of agree with me and supported Ron. There's some people that I thought it made some really interesting points, kind of anti-Ron, if you will. Jason says, I think Ron should become GM and Bieniemy should become head coach. I think the past few drafts have been good. They seem to get a lot out of later round picks. People seem to have forgotten what a bleep show this team was before Ron. So the thing about that is I agree and disagree with it. The organization was a bleep show. The roster was not. Like, the roster had issues. They had a massive quarterback issue, in part because the owner, who is now leaving, made them take Dwayne Haskins, right? They also screwed up the Kirk Cousins thing. They got incredibly unlucky with Alex Smith's injury. So there's like a multitude of factors there. They had let the skill positions on offense deteriorate, but they also did draft Terry McLaurin in 2019, the year that ultimately Jay and company got fired. But, you know, throughout most of that tenure, and technically still, they had Trent Williams, right? Ryan Kerrigan was reaching the end, but they did draft Montez Sweat as well. I would still argue that the best players that have been here under Ron Rivera, the highest caliber of players, were guys that were drafted by the previous administration. John Allen, Deron Payne, Montez Sweat. I think Cam Curl's finally starting to break through, but Terry, obviously Brandon Sheriff was on that list when he was here. Like he was brought in by the prior administration. I do, but I also struggle because I think that they're better depth-wise now. They had so many just like Jags, just guys that were here under Gruden, and they weren't as good at some of that stuff. But now you feel like they have depth in a lot more places. Offensive line is obviously the major exception, but they haven't gotten the stars right, and they haven't gotten the quarterback right still. And so that's where I struggle. Like, I'm just kind of in the middle and don't know what to do because I like what they've done this offseason, but I acknowledge that this roster has been a struggle for the time that Ron's been here. Fulio Iglesias says, one of my favorite commenters just because of the name. His name, Anthony, at least on YouTube, is Fulio. Spot on. I've been saying the same thing. I'm not a Ron guy, but the roster and culture is better, and nobody can deny that. The roster was super trash before we got here. Everything takes time, and you will have some bad choices, etc. That's the thing. The only thing I disagree with is that it was total trash. And by the way, Ron made a decision, right, to not mend things with Trent Williams. That was an option that was available to Ron Rivera on some level, and they were just like, nah, let's just get you a fresh start, which I don't think was unreasonable considering everything that had happened. But, like, They should have tried harder to keep a Hall of Famer who, by the way, has been the best left tackle in football since he left. They have made some other questionable decisions, but they've also retained like the best parts of that roster, the star players that are still their stars. Next comment says, the one coach who actually tries to build from within, like some of the best franchises, Packers, Patriots, Steelers, they don't go spending big in the market they grow their guys and produce. No other coach has done that. Again, like, to an extent, this is always going to be in the margins, right? No one's ever done that. No one's ever... Yeah, they did. Ryan Kerrigan was here for the better part of a decade. Trent Williams was here. Brandon Sheriff, they drafted and developed a guy like Jamison Crowder who was really good, but they just didn't re-sign him to that second contract. He actually became too good that they couldn't afford to keep him. But they also had a ton of misses. Guys like Josh Doctson. They did bring in like the Terrell Pryors that didn't work out. So there were a lot of misses in that era. But Ron definitely has done more drafting and developing than bringing in outside guys, to the point that he gets criticized basically every offseason about the free agency plan. They've taken a Cam Curl and developed him. They obviously were willing to play a longer game with Jamin Davis, and it looks like that might very well pan out in their favor. And they've continued to develop Terry and sign him up long-term. John, Deron get the long-term contracts. So there's been a lot of guys that they try to elevate from within, and it's not sexy, but it works, right? And that's something that we've talked about on this show a ton, is that if they had spent $22 million on someone like Jeffrey Simmons or Dexter Lawrence, everyone's like, wow, big splash in the offseason. They did the same thing, but with Deron Payne, and it's better because you get the benefit of the continuity as well. But I also like this comment from Brittany a lot. Brittany said, it's how slow the process is taking and the lack of aggression. We see the division improving in far less time and having way more success. Philly, for example, goes out and gets blue chip players they need because they want to win. Look at what they did this offseason. Lost their defensive talent and then stacked it up all back over again. Not to mention he kept moving the papers around the desk on the quarterback situation. He also dismantled the O-line and neglected it. The last straw would have been what he did, or should have been what he did with Wentz. That to me is like the most accurate comment. If you try to say like, well, I kind of like this, why isn't it working? The offensive line and quarterback are two areas that there is legitimate criticism. And I actually think, this might be an unpopular opinion, the offensive line, they've screwed up worse than they did the quarterback. The quarterback, they had a bunch of bad luck. They didn't know that Ryan Fitzpatrick, coming off the best season of his career, is going to have his hip explode. Carson, that 100%, I said at the time, that was a bad one. And I think under different ownership situation, obviously that could have been the last straw. But you can't have it be the last straw when the owner is actually on the way out, because who's going to hire a new head coach? Like, Dan could not fire Ron. You didn't want Dan to fire Ron, because that means Dan hires the next guy and then gives that person to Josh Harris. And we see what a disaster that would have been with the timeline where Harris ain't even in here. yet, and we're in May at this point, and we've known he's going to buy the team. It was the favorite to buy the team for a long time. So the offensive line stuff, whether it's Trent, what they did with Sheriff, whether it's not developing enough guys, whether it's spending on the wrong guys, Norwell, Turner, etc. last year, that's where this team has really gone wrong. Even if I like a lot of the pieces they made on the margins, the aggression thing, yeah, like I look at a guy like James Bradbury, who Ron is familiar with. I'm like, the Eagles signed him for what? You could have gotten James Bradbury? Like, come on. So there are some moves that I think, whether it's they signed the wrong guy, like William Jackson, didn't sign the right guy, a guy like Bradbury, where they could have potentially done better. But I think in large part this offseason has been their best one. We'll obviously see. And it is year 4, so it is slow to Brittany's point. And that kind of gets to this, right? Mark says, Ron has always been a bad coach. History doesn't lie. 2 double-digit win seasons in 13 years. He never gets the best out of his players. He's never been good at roster building. Just look up the numbers in history. And, that's correct. The history is not good at all. But I also try to be objective and say, okay, well, this offseason, what have they done? Do I like it? Do I think they're better? The answer is yes. So it's one of those we're going to wait and see. And, again, kind of now at this point at the end talking in circles. GB says offensive line. Sure, Ron kicks himself for Wentz decision, wasted a lot of games, but I agreed at the time. We'll see this year. I do think Ron has learned a lot over these 4 years or 3 years going into year 4. The question is, does he have the time? Because if it doesn't come together this year, there are going to be no more years. That is the nature of new ownership. It's the Hoffman Show. Team 980, always live on the free Odyssey app. That was never read the comments. We did it again. We did it. We survived. Anthony, feeling good on the back end of these comments?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. If you would like to leave a comment, you can do so on our YouTube page, youtube.com/@CraigHoffman. Also, you can watch us live each and every day at youtube.com/@TheTeam980. When we get back, former NFL MVP, Matt Ryan. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Final hour here on YouTube, youtube.com/@the-team980. Of course, 980 AM, 106.7 HD2 FM in DC. Anywhere you're driving around, just flip on over on the HD radio. Get a nice crystal clear signal for the show. Of course, on the team980.com and the free Odyssey app as well. So, on top, all those same places, you can get a not so little anymore podcast called Take Command. And, we've been pretty big time for a while now, but today, one of our best conversations, one of our biggest guests we've ever had, Matt Ryan. Yeah, that Matt Ryan, as in former NFL MVP Matt Ryan, former teammate of Logan Parsons as well. Just a phenomenal conversation. This is actually an exclusive first listen. This has not been out anywhere else yet. It's not on YouTube yet. It's not in the Take Command feed yet. This is what you get as a nice little gift from me to you for listening to this here radio show. Without further ado, Logan and I's conversation with former NFL MVP, Matt Ryan.
It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulson and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. I'm Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulson, and with us today, the newest analyst for CBS Sports' NFL coverage, a longtime NFL quarterback, still technically current NFL quarterback. I want to ask about that in a second. Matt Ryan. Matt, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Is that the first time you've been introduced as a CBS Sports analyst? Are we your first interview?
Yeah, it is.
Look at us.
So
Let's go.
Sounds a little weird. Yeah, but
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so you specifically did not retire to do this. You are joining, CBS, doing the TV stuff. Still waiting on to see if there's another opportunity. But why was now the right time to potentially pursue television, and what could also pull you back to the football field?
Well, I think the opportunity that CBS is giving me to kind of do a little bit of everything. To me, it seemed like too good of an opportunity to pass up. It gives me a chance really to find out, number one, what I'm okay at, what I'm decent at, and number two, what I'm interested in, whether that be being in the studio or calling games. So the unique kind of setup of the opportunity intrigued me. The people, that I have the opportunity to learn from while I'm up there, whether it be in New York or whether it be calling games, all of the stars aligned for it. And at the same time, I've learned throughout my NFL career that a lot of crazy things can happen during the season, right? A lot of weird things can go on. And so, keeping options available and just being prudent with that, I thought was the right, way to go. And we'll see how it shakes out in terms of the football side of it. But I'm excited to start working with the folks at CBS and to start diving into this next chapter.
Well, first off, I think you're going to be excellent at it because you're such a bright guy. But is this something that you wanted to do? And, did you have, an audition? Did you do any prep for it? Or was it just like, hey, I'm Matt Ryan, I'm super articulate, this will work out?
It was a little more complicated than that.
Well, I mean, come on. That's why you're here to provide that analysis, man.
No, it was – I had always kind of thought about it, but I think when you're playing quarterback in the NFL, it's somewhere way in the back. You're so focused on what you're doing. And I had the opportunity after the season to go up and do some studio work with CBS during the playoffs. And it intrigued me. It really did. I think it started to scratch that itch. And I found somewhere deep in the back of the brain, this could be something that I'd be interested in, moving forward. But to me, it's about the people. And so, getting to know the people behind the scenes, starting to meet with them, at different points of the off season and really talking about what it could look like moving forward and the positions that they were looking for, the things that they thought I could help with, the things I was interested in, the things that I want to do. I think, it all kind of just aligned. And, I'm thankful for this opportunity and really now starting to get to work, of trying to figure out how to best do this moving forward.
I always find it interesting, especially for quarterbacks going into the media world, because you guys spend so much time studying, so much time preparing, and you're also very secretive. As someone who used to be a beat reporter and would try to get information out of whether it was Kirk Cousins or some of the other guys that I covered, like occasionally they give you a nugget, but typically it was after the game, and it's like, all right, here's what I saw, here's what we were looking at. You don't get the good stuff during the week. How does that preparation change now that you're going to be the whole reason you're preparing is to share the information with people?
It's very different. It's very different. It's not about kind of hiding all that you're doing during the week. It's now trying to look at what other people are doing and explain the whys. Tell the story of what they're trying to accomplish, how they're trying to accomplish, what certain players they're trying to either use or expose or take advantage of. But that part, I always really loved that part of it, right? Like during the week, getting prepared, having an understanding of what we were trying to attack, how we were going to do it, and then pulling it all together, trying to piece our pieces into that. To me, that was such a part of my day to day, and such a part of the enjoyment that I got out of playing that position. That I think it's a natural move to kind of stay in that flow state of watching film and trying to break down what teams are doing. So I've got to work on trying to articulate it. I think I've always said as a quarterback to other players, I don't care what you say. I don't care what you can draw on the board. I care what you do. And now it has changed. Now it really matters what I can say and how I can explain it, and less about what I can do. And that part of it is going to be fun.
Yeah, I mean, I was only with you for a year, but I always felt like you had a really good knack for that. New guys coming into the system, kind of bringing them along, and I feel like it's going to be really similar. And a couple times while you've been talking, you said it. This opportunity aligns with things that you want to do. Of the things that they've kind of positioned for you, what are the things that you're most excited about doing?
Well, I think there's a definite interest in calling games.
Sure.
And, having the opportunity to do that next year, I think will be a great challenge. There's so many moving parts that go on kind of behind the scenes. That part intrigues me. The pace at which it goes, I really like.
Yeah.
I've always liked that idea of you prepare all week and then you get this 3-hour window to go show whether that preparation was worth it or not. And so I like that idea of it. But the studio side of it is also interesting to me too, because having gone up and done it, and then, watching games while they're going on, having to commentate about what you see from the first half, what adjustments you might see, breaking down plays, and sometimes, trying to educate, fans on the why of certain play calls or decisions that people are making. I really like that part too. That strategy side of it, the game planning side of it has always been something that has fascinated me. So the ability to do both this first year
cool.
and really get a feel for, what makes sense long term. I feel lucky. I feel a bit like a kid going to college where I have no idea what my major is going to be, but I get to take a bunch of those courses at the beginning, figure out what I like, and then go from there. And luckily, I'm a lot more mature than I was when I was 18, so I hopefully will make a much better decision than I did in college. But finally, my communications degree from Boston College is paying off.
I was going to say, what was the ultimate decision? Communications major, huh?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm saying that I started in the business school, the CSUN, Carroll School of Management, and I was the starting quarterback as a redshirt sophomore, so I was in my junior year, and I was already into like the major part of it. I took this course, Business Applied Statistics, during the football season. About halfway through it, I was like, this is not for me. I am not, I don't think I can do this. And I switched over to the communication school and finished with the degree in communications. And in all honesty, it couldn't have worked out better, making that switch for what I had to do in the NFL, being, in front of the camera so much, and now, sliding into this portion of it. Hopefully I can draw back on some of the things that I learned there at BC and make my parents happy that, that degree wasn't wasted.
Yeah, I don't think Logan, 10 years for you. Matt, would you 15 or so
15 or
years for
something.
you?
Yeah.
Any applied statistics in your NFL career? No?
No.
No. I've just
No.
here's the thing. I've been busting down people for relying too heavily on statistics for 15 years. Like, don't give me this BS with the statistics. Show me the results. Did we win?
Yeah.
Did we lose? Who cares about the stats?
That's
Yeah.
funny. All right, so Matt, I want to talk a little ball with you, and then I got one question, and I want to get the hell out the way because, I'm very anti-clickbait. I know what the people want, and they want you and Logan to talk ball. So I'm going to ask my one question. I'm going to get out the way for a few minutes and let you guys talk ball. But you obviously faced Ron Rivera twice a year for all those years that you were in Atlanta, and he was in Carolina, and prepared for what was really his defense. Although he was the head coach, he was very hands-on in Carolina. That is not how he has approached things here, and you did face this team last year with the Colts. Sam Ehlinger obviously started that game, but you were in all the meetings and helping Sam prepare. What differences do you see from the defense that Rivera used to run in Carolina compared to the one that Jack Del Rio is essentially running under him here in D.C.?
Yeah, I think, I played against Ron so often in Carolina. And, I mean, there were some incredible defenses. Great players. Luke Kuechly, comes to mind of just, guy in the middle that kind of made it go for them. And then, going against Jack all those years too, whether it was, in Denver or in Oakland or now Vegas, I saw a lot of those guys during my career. I think both of them have evolved. I think the game's different. There's no question about that. From when I first got into the league in 2008 to where it is now and how offenses are trying to attack defenses is much different. And I think you've seen both of these guys evolve. They're playing a lot more single high safety than what we saw when they were in Carolina. I mean, my experience of going against those Carolina defenses was they were playing a cover 4 shell, trying to keep things in front but be aggressive on the outside. And when we played Washington last year, there was a little bit of that, but for the most part, they were a single safety outfit and playing man-to-man coverage and playing 3-deep zone. So they're a little bit different, but the thing that you're always going to have with those two coaches is they're going to be sound in run fits. It starts and ends there, on the defensive side of the ball. And so whether it's in their blitz packages, whether it's in their base, 4 down front stuff, they're going to be sound fitting the run. And I think they've always done a nice job of that. I thought they were a really good defense last year. As we were preparing for them, and getting ready to go, they had a lot of pieces, a lot of different guys that were out there making plays and they were playing aggressive. And, they kept the team in it the day we played them with the Colts and gave Heineke a chance there at the end, and he comes up with this, miracle play at the end of the game. But I like what their defense is doing. I've always, appreciated Ron as a head coach. I think he's a good man. He's tough to go against. Had to go, against him, too often, but they're going to be sound, and they're going to continue to be sound for as long as he's there.
Yeah, and something that I think is interesting, you mentioned like this transition to single high, and like this is a little bit of a football nerdy question. And with that single high, there's been a lot of like this cover 3 match, which kind of gets bastardized into like this cover 6. And like, it's really, really hard to tell what defenses are in oftentimes. And I just wanted to know, like, how does that affect you as a quarterback? Because you're kind of, teams are moving away from this, like, oh, we're in quarters and here are the 4 segments and here's cover 2 and here's cover 3. And it's becoming much more harder to diagnose because they're kind of in this in between with this match principle. So just like, what challenges does that face and how do you prepare for that?
Yeah, I wish we could go back. I wish we could go back to you knew exactly what you were looking at. Here's cover 4. I'm throwing this post. Don't worry about it. Let it fly. But you're right. I think the league has shifted to a lot more hybrid coverages. And you talk about that cover 6 and that cover 3, that 3 match. Depending on where the high safety is, you really can't tell.
It looks the same, man. It looks the same.
There's a lot of difficulty in determining whether or not that guy's playing middle field or whether he's cheating to a side or whether it's truly a half to that boundary side. And so it's difficult. I always go back to it probably shifted for me, year 6, year 7, where you started to see a lot more of of these combination coverages where it was maybe a little bit of man over here, maybe a little bit of zone on this side. There were different principles within that. And it really became about reading spots. And Logan, you can go back to this of having played for Kyle Shanahan. One of the things that changed for me when he came in was, hey, let's have a good idea of what they're doing in the back end, but let's not obsess over it.
Right.
Let's read spots. Let's understand if we think it's split safety, we're going to start on this side, but we're going to work our progression. If we think it's single high, we're going to start over here. And then we would always have the caveat of, if I knew nothing, if I have zero idea what they're in, because if you're being real, there's times where that's the case. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure if this 3 buzz. I'm not really sure, where they're at. So I would always have the caveat in there. Hey, what's my progression if I know nothing?
Yeah.
What if I have zero idea what's my progression? And then you really start to read spots. And I think the more you get those combination coverages, the more you see kind of amoeba shells in the back end, the more it's about starting in spots, trusting your progressions. If it's not there, check the ball down or run.
And can you elaborate that, like reading spots? Because I think a lot of people say, I'm reading the corner, I'm reading here. But like with Kyle, you're just like you're reading, you're attacking like an area of the field, right? And so could you just kind of go into that process a little bit more and why that helps you out in terms of not having to know exactly what's happening?
Yeah, I think it's so huge. They ask so much of you as a quarterback to turn your back,
right?
To turn your back and show that run. Whether it's they're doing more of it from the gun now than when I was playing for Kyle, but
right.
Even still, you're shrinking, you're turning your back, and so you don't really have the opportunity to diagnose the post snap.
Right.
So it's a lot of your work has to be done pre-snap, and then you have to trust it. The thing I think they do a great job of, and when I say seeing spots, we might be attacking 2 yards outside the hash.
Right. Yes.
Or 2 yards or 4 to 6 yards inside the numbers. And so it gives you this mental just picture of, as soon as I snap my back, I know exactly where my eyes need to go. And then you've got to assess whether it's muddy or it's not. And know, we would talk about reading with your feet all the time, and know that if that picture 2 yards outside the hash or 4 yards from the number is muddy on my first hitch, it's on to whoever is second in the progression. If it's muddy on the second hitch, ball's out to the check down or you're running.
Right.
And I think that's being very specific with the landmarks that you're trying to attack, I think is important in the league right now.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Just those, like the landmarks and the zones. And the other thing that I think Kyle, and you could speak to this way better than I could, is did a great job of is, I don't want to say giving the quarterback like easy throws, like easy opportunities off of the play action. And that was such a big feature of kind of saying like, hey, I'm not going to ask you to kind of get back there and be Mozart for 50 snaps. I'm going to give you 5 keepers. I'm going to give you 10 play pass. I'm going to give you 5 quick game. How important is that for you as a quarterback to kind of say, I don't have to be back here, like sometimes you were in Indy just wheeling and dealing for 50 snaps, which is pretty tough ball.
Yeah. It's hard to consistently win that way.
Yeah.
Where you're dropping back, where you're asking your offensive line to protect drop back passing 50, 55 times in a game. You might be able to do it a handful of times, but week in and week out, the D lines are too good. I remember having a meeting with Kyle. This is probably halfway through my first season with him.
Yeah.
And he said, listen, Matt, he said, my job is first and second down. He said, my job is to get guys open for you on first and second down, whether it's keepers, whether it's quick game, whether it's play action pass, whatever it is. That's my responsibility. He's like, where I need you to come to life is on third down and in the red area. And really, as you see the teams that he's been a part of, they do such a good job of creating explosives on first and second down. And like you said, they've got guys running open.
Yeah.
They get guys open. But for them to be successful, you've got to be able to convert those third downs that you need to, and then you've got to be able to make plays in the red area. And I always thought that freed me up as a player. I was like, all right, I'm gonna get 15 pass attempts a game where guys are gonna be open, or you're gonna check it down and it's all good, and then there's gonna be another 15 that you really got to go make a play. You got to fit one in there, or if you got to find a way to get it done. And I really think he does such a great job with that.
And sorry, I got one more question, Craig. This idea, Kyle, he's a, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe him. He's got a high standard. Let's say that. He's got a high standard. You also have a high standard. You also have a very strong opinion. How was that relationship, and how did that improve, like make you better? How did the fact that he was like, I have a very strong perspective of this offense, basically say like, I believe this should be in, even if it makes you uncomfortable? How did that elevate the offense? How did that elevate you? And what was that relationship like?
Finding words. I know I'm in this business now, but finding words is difficult. I think that
because you right now, I can tell you're kind of doing this politician thing. Sometimes you just gotta let it rip, man. Just let it
go. No, number one, I'll say this. Number one, the thing I always appreciated about him is you knew exactly where you stood. What there was no gray area. There was zero gray area of how he felt. And I always appreciated that. As a player, you want honest feedback. Yeah. All I want is for you to put me in a position to be successful, and I want to play my best. I think that he pushed me to get better. He pushed me outside of my comfort zone. There was a lot of stuff early on. I was like, hey, I haven't really done that, in my career. I haven't, specialized in this, but we've done more of this. And he goes, I don't care, Matt, you can. He's like, I don't care what you've done. I know what you can do, and push me to get better. And I really, I appreciate him for that. As far as our relationship, it was really cool because the first year we were together, it was like we were both kind of feeling each other out. We were kind of being nice to each other or whatever. And then we had this kind of meeting in the off season between my first and second year with him. And we came to the agreement that we both just had to let it out. Like if we need to have these back and forth, go at each other, whatever. So we would have the meetings up in the, offensive coordinator spot in the second floor of Flowery Branch, where he'd be just on my ass, getting after me, and I'd be going back at him, and he'd call me on the ride home. So like I would be leaving, I'd be like, man, that was intense. Hopefully it's all good tomorrow. And then he'd call me on the ride home and he'd be like, dude, that was awesome. Exactly what we needed. We're like in a great spot for install tomorrow. And I'd be like, all right, we're good. So it turned into, a really good, really great relationship. I enjoyed playing for him. But we were both headstrong, and both had great belief in what we were doing. And I really think we both pushed each other to be the best versions of ourselves.
Love it. All right, so we've gotten to some of the stories that I was hoping we'd get to. But I always love to wrap these interviews with former Logan Paulson teammates with an exchange of stories. So, Logan, I need your best Matt story. Matt, I need your best Logan story. I don't care who goes first. Logan, you muted yourself. That's the one way you can fail at this.
Matt,
there we
failed.
go.
I'm back. So I will say, like, playing for Matt was fantastic. Like, the highest compliment I can give another professional football player is to say he was like the consummate pro. Always prepared, always knew exactly what was doing. And I was like, and I thought I was that way. I thought I was really dialed in. And I remember the first, and so like there's a lot of very positive stories about Matt, like him getting guys lined up, him coaching up, him. And I remember we were doing a walkthrough and we had just put in all of our code words for Apache, which is like 25 words. And there, I don't remember exactly how we did it, but it was like there was like a formational word and there was a play word. So it was a little bit different than other places I've been, right? And I was like, okay. And I remember going up to him because I was studying and we had just got the install and I was really pouring over it. And I go, hey, Matt, like we were just on the first play. I was like, hey, Matt, can you just be a little bit more deliberate just for today, just for the walkthrough? And Matt looks at me and I remember Austin Hooper was standing right there and he goes, that you match my speed. And then we just went right to the walkthrough. And I was like, all right, I better be dialed in. And I was like, but it was like, but that's how he was, man. And like, I respected the out of that because like, that was something that was his standard. He wasn't going to compromise his standard for anything. And like, that made the offense better. So I always think back on that story and just being like, oh, like, I better remember all those Rolodex words. Sorry for all the profanity there. But yeah.
Yeah, Nick, sorry you now have to edit a bunch, but good story. Good job, Logan. Matt,
dude, that's funny.
Your favorite Logan Paulson story.
I always laugh because I feel like people are always like, Matt, like you're the nicest guy. Like, what's it like you playing football? I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think you know me that well.
But you were always really. But that's the thing. You were always nice. Like I remember you'd say, and you'd play ping pong in the locker room, and like you were very, despite who you were always very accessible and approachable. But when it was like, let's be ready to go, it was like, let's be ready to go, and that's totally reasonable, I think. So,
That's why I love Logan. I agree with you. To me, it wasn't too hard. I always felt like, listen, have fun, do all you got to do, but when it's time to work, it's time to work. And, let's not waste any of that time. I think my favorite Logan story is, well, first of all, I got to say, he's a consummate pro. I mean, there's no doubt about it. That compliment, probably gets thrown around a little too much, but like, I agree with him. There's certain guys that you play with that just do everything right. From taking care of their body to the training, to how they approach walkthroughs, how they approach meetings. They just do it right. And Logan was that guy. And he was always one of the guys for me. It was like, you don't have to worry about, as a quarterback, you've got to have a great idea of the guys that you're playing with. And like, all right, he might not have had it the first walkthrough for our code words on our no huddle, but like by day 3, he's going to be fine, but there are certain guys that doesn't matter how many walkthroughs you do, they're not going to know it. And so, you've got to just continue to work with those guys. But I always appreciated that. It took a load off my plate playing with them. But my favorite story is, I think we were playing Cincinnati. Was it Cincinnati?
That's not what depends on the story, but maybe we were playing Cincinnati.
So Logan catches this touchdown.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was Cincinnati. Yep.
It was Cincinnati. So we put in this play, and it was like, I think we called it Hoss Juke or something like that. I can't remember what we called it in that offense, but Logan's on a seam, right? So he's our vertical threat, taking the top off the defense.
Digging out, guys.
We're talking in the week. I don't think we ever said it in the install with those guys, but they're like, listen, Logan's not even in the progression. He's taking the top off this thing. We're trying to work this little option route down. And they bust this coverage. And I mean, he is screaming wide open.
I wasn't even supposed to be on the play. They were supposed to sub somebody else in because I thought I was too slow to run this route. Just for the context here for everybody.
So he's screaming wide open. And I'm like, Matt, throw it at his back shoulder. You might hit him in stride. If you try and back shoulder him. Threw it right at him. He catches it. It was an awesome touchdown. Just the celebration afterwards was so much fun. For me, it was always fun celebrating the touchdowns with the guys that didn't score them all the time. Like
take that, Julio Jones.
Yeah, and I'm not. I'm saying that, but like, your role for us was you did the dirty work, and when you see guys that do the dirty work get rewarded for it, that was really cool. Something I'll never forget. Caveman. And the caveman was in there in the end zone celebrating. It was awesome.
And that was back when I was about 280, and running was tough at that point, boys. So nice to get a bone like that. Yeah, for sure.
I love it. All right, well, you can catch Matt this season on CBS, whether it's in the booth calling games, in studio with the guys up in New York. Matt, this was great. Hopefully we can do it again. Appreciate the time, and welcome to the media. Welcome to the dark side.
Yeah. Thank you, fellas. I appreciate it. Anytime. I'd love to come on.
Want more from Craig and Logan? Subscribe now on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. More Hoffman Show next on the Team 980 and the free Odyssey app.
DC has a new home for your favorite songs from the 80s.
Tom Petty.
Def Leppard. Nobody plays more 80s.
Bon Jovi.
Prince. 94.7.
Madonna. Bruce Springsteen.
The Drive. Since 1989, thewindowman.com has been your local educational window company. With 3 lines of installed fiberglass windows in their industry-leading showroom, come see for yourself in a friendly atmosphere. And now receive $200 off every fiberglass window. Fiberglass windows are 8 times stronger than vinyl, offer more glass and expanded views. Free estimates, 703-978-9888, thewindowman.com, or in their Fairfax showroom. Specific product lines, minimums, and installation required.
Virginia is for eaters and drinkers, all kinds of eaters and drinkers. For oyster shuckers and slurpers. Winery samplers are all-day wine drinkers. Brewery hoppers and distillery sippers. For those who order grits and those who order cheese grits. We all know what the right way to order is. For barbecue triers who turn into finger lickers and meat off the bone suckers. All right, all this talk of food is making me hungry. I gotta go get some mac and cheese. Like I was saying, Virginia is for all sorts of food lovers. So come love it for yourself. Furnished by the Virginia Tourism Corporation.
Catching the Junks here. PVI Office Furniture has been servicing the DMV since 1992. That's longer than the Junks have been on these airwaves. Check out their showroom in Frederick, Maryland. Open 6 days a week. Both new and used solutions to fit any budget. In stock, quick delivery too. Get out to Frederick today and find out why PVI has been the DMV's go-to office furniture resource for 30 years. Fast delivery, excellent service, affordable furnishings. Business grows with PVI. Visit PVI.com for more information.
When I can't sleep, my mind just races. I think about work, the kids, but I don't think about taking melatonin because I'm afraid I'll feel groggy in the morning.
ZzzQuil Pure Z's Gummies has an optimal dose of melatonin for no next-day grogginess, so you can fall asleep naturally and wake up feeling refreshed. ZzzQuil Pure Z's Gummies for better sleep like never before. And try Pure Z Sleep Plus Next Day Energy with melatonin plus extended release B vitamins.
Here's how we long for Skechers hands-free slip-in footwear.
The world has gone hands-free. However, if you want to put on a pair of sneakers, you still need to bend down and help your feet in. Until now. Introducing Skechers hands-free slip-in footwear. You don't need to reach down to help your heel in. You just step into them and off you go. So what's the secret? Well, there's a special smooth comfort pillow in the heel that helps your foot slide into place. And they stay on just like a pair of laced-up sneakers.
Get hands-free slip-ins at a Skechers store, Skechers.com, or wherever stylish footwear is sold.
You don't have to wait till Memorial Day to smell what we've got cooking here at Bannister Ford of Marlow Heights. This is General Sales Manager Shanice Kraft, serving up Memorial Day deals all month long. Like rates as low as 0% for 60 months or 1.9 for 72 on most remaining 22 models. Or score an in-demand Mustang Mach-E and take advantage of that $7,500 federal tax credit. At Bannister Ford of Marlow Heights, we'll buy your car even if you don't buy ours. Just stop by and ask Shanice, have you seen my keys? Shop BannisterFord.com.
Diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety meds, everyone's on them. If you're a 50-year-old male, maybe a bit porky, and you may even have type 2 diabetes, $1 million of term insurance may only cost you about $200 a month. Call Term Provider. Speak with Big Lou at 800-444-9336. Big Lou will find a term life policy for you even if you have type 2 diabetes, are overweight, or have high blood pressure. Term Provider has helped thousands of people like you who think they can't afford term life insurance. To buy $1 million of affordable term life for you, all you need to do is call Big Lou at 800-444-9336. Lou will make sure the scales are tipped in your favor. Call 800-444-9336. Big Lou will answer your call and work to fit you into a term life policy that you can afford. Remember, Big Lou's like you. He's on meds too. Call 800-444-9336. 800-444-9336.
Here at Oarsman Chevrolet of Bowie, April showers bring a little something different. May Power. That's the power for qualified buyers to score 1.9% financing on all new Blazer, Equinox, Trailblazer, and Traverse models. This is Brian Sargent, General Sales Manager at Oarsman Chevrolet of Bowie, home of the Oarsman Promise, including lifetime engine guarantee and free car washes for life with any service. Find new roads.
And remember, you always get your way at Oarsman Chevrolet of Bowie.
Finding great...
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Thanks again to Matt Ryan for joining us on Take Command. Hope everybody enjoyed that sneak peek of the interview. We don't always do that. We don't always give you kind of the whole pod here on the show, or at least a full interview like that. But that was so good, and it's my parting gift to you. I'm out the rest of the week. Scott Jackson and Doc Walker will be in. I mentioned that not only to give those guys some well-deserved love, but also to say if you're watching on YouTube right now, or you typically watch on YouTube, we will be off streaming the next couple of days. So get your Anthony Haney fix now as you eye the camera. Yeah, give the eyebrows, the whole deal. Yeah, get your fix now, because you just have to watch on demand. We have, if you miss part of the show, we obviously are on demand. You can just go to the Team 980's YouTube page and rewind on any of the entire shows. Or you can, watch any of the segments that we cut up, all kinds of good stuff. Make sure you subscribe. YouTube.com/@theteam980, and also the highlights at Craig Hoffman. Almost at 2,500 followers, by the way, subscribers, Anthony. I should double check that. We might be at 2,500 on my page. We're 2,487, so we're getting close. It's been a good month. May has been very, very good to me. All right, Eastern Conference Finals tonight. You got the Celtics, you got the Heat, rematch of last year. Of course, last year the Heat were the number 1 seed. This year, they are the underdogs, first 8 seed ever to make it this far, even though they're kind of actually the 7 seed because they were the 7th best team in the East. They just lost the first play-in game. But, Anthony, I have no idea what to make of this series because I don't pretend to know who the Miami Heat are. I don't pretend to have any clue whether they are the team that they were all regular season long that was up and down in terms of performance, couldn't shoot worth a lick, or this team that has caught fire, been locked in on every detail in the playoffs, and could give this Celtics team a run for their money. Because this is basically the same team that was the number 1 seed last year. And that's the thing that makes this so nuts is like, yeah, they're the 7/8 seed, but they're also kind of the 1 seed. And if you quit thinking about the seedings, because we're now in mid-May, we're no longer in April, we have another month of data on who this team has been, who these teams have been. I think this is a series that goes 6 or 7 games.
Yeah, and I think you said it perfectly. We don't know who this Miami Heat team is. They were on the brink of elimination and not even making the playoffs. And we've just continued to see Jimmy Butler, his performance just improve. And he's single-handedly just put this team on his back. And it's also sort of kind of the team that we saw in the bubble a couple of years ago. They're missing a few people, but, I mean, it's Jimmy Butler, and then you got Bam. And I think this series is ultimately going to come down to what Bam you get. I think we've seen times where Bam is very aggressive offensively, and then we've seen him, disappear a little bit. But we always know what we're going to get from Bam on the defensive end. But Jimmy, he's going to need some help, and I think Bam Adebayo is going to be the X factor for the Miami Heat in this series.
So I think you're right, and it's also why I favor the Celtics. Al Horford is such an X factor for them, and he's Bam Adebayo in a lot of ways before Bam Adebayo was. Al doesn't handle the ball like Bam does. Like Bam is an evolved version of Al Horford, but Al's a better shooter. And, they're both just phenomenal defenders. And Al is kind of built to guard Bam. He's big enough. He's strong enough. You can't really post. I mean, Joel Embiid found out it's hard to post Al Horford, even at 152 years old. Is Bam going to take him off the dribble, try to face-up game? Like, Al's dealt with all of this stuff and guarded it well for a decade and a half in the NBA. So I think Bam gets neutralized on that end of the floor a little bit. The question is the defense going to be on a string behind him because Bam's obviously a great facilitator. You have all these great cutters and smart players. And I just think the Celtics match up really well with the Heat. I mean, that's kind of the problem for them. Kyle Lowry gets Marcus Smart on him. Like, good luck with that. Jimmy is going to have to deal with Brown and Tatum, who are long and athletic, and obviously Smart can switch over there as well. If you want to go with like a smaller, peskier guard on him, you've got Derek White, who also, by the way, can guard Lowry and give him fits with his strength and speed. I think Lowry's going to have to be huge in this series. Like, I think Lowry, like, posting up if Derek White's on him, things like that. But, like, Lowry, a guy who knows how to play bully ball, you're not bullying Marcus Smart. Like, I just don't see the offensive firepower there for Miami, in part because I think Boston is built in a lot of ways to match up well. And those matchups, by the way, don't exactly line up on the other end. Like, okay, Boston's got multiple options to guard Jimmy. Jimmy's going to guard Tatum, but, like, who they got for Jaylen Brown? You know, who they got for some of the other guys that have generated offense for Boston. I think a guy like Grant Williams, who didn't play basically at all last series, could come in and potentially be an interesting player as a guy who can score it a little bit in bench roles, but a bigger guy. So I do think it comes down to these matchups, as we always say in the playoffs. And then you look at them and you just go, Boston's got answers. I don't know that Miami does, but you'd also would have said that against Milwaukee, and here we are. Milwaukee went home in 5 games.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring up the size factor that Boston has over the Miami Heat. I think we saw that show up in the last series against Philadelphia, and Philadelphia isn't a small team. Like, they have Joel Embiid, they have Tobias, they have PJ Tucker, but when the Celtics decided to go with Robert Williams and Al Horford and literally just utilize that size, it presented problems for Philly. So I think the Miami, they're going to have to be able to hit threes. They're not going to get a lot of things on the interior and in the paint. So I think it also comes down to the Miami Heat hitting a lot of threes. And in the last game against the Knicks, they only hit 7 threes. So,
but they also won.
Yeah, they did win. They did win. But I'm just saying you're going to need some offensive firepower from beyond the arc if you're going to expect to upset the Celtics.
No, I agree. All right, that game tonight, I'd say we'll talk about it tomorrow, but we won't. Anthony will with Scott and Doc. I'll be out tomorrow. But I don't know. When I'm out and Scott and Doc are in, do you guys do real things to end the show still?
Yes.
Got to.
Yes.
Got
it's
to.
Imperative.
Imperative. Every single day. This here radio program must end with real things real people said into real microphones, and so we will. Next.
Here's what's trending.
That is true. That is true. Today is my Friday, but alas, I don't think we need to give. Like, I think 1 dose per week is the right amount. We don't want to overdose folks on Friday.
You're right. So I might not play it on Friday then.
I know. I actually think you should. Because you know why? And this is where I'm yeah, exactly. I'm mad that I can't watch the live stream on Friday, that we haven't gotten it set up where we can stream when I'm out, because I want to see Doc Walker's. Can you just like set up your phone and record video?
I think that's what I'm gonna do.
And then tweet it out.
Yep.
Tag me in it.
I got you.
This is what happened when I played. Because one of two things is going to...
right here, actually. Because Doc is going to be looking this. I already know he is. He's going to be looking this way.
Yeah. So one of two things is going to happen. One, he's not going to react at all. Two, you guys are going to be late on the hard out to toss to BetMGM tonight.
Yep.
Because Doc is going to be so... What's the word?
He's gonna.
It's not mad. He's not gonna be mad at you. He's just gonna. He's gonna be confused.
Yeah.
Anthony, what the hell? You know. See, this is. What does he call you now? He doesn't even call you Orangeman anymore.
Oh, he calls me
Baby AI.
Yeah, Baby AI. Yep.
Baby Iverson.
Yep.
Baby
AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm excited to see what Doc has to say, man.
I am too. All right. Let's hit it. It's time for Real Things Real People Said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5-11. Not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
Culture is damn good. Not in the part of Ashburn. I guess it's better in the part of Ashburn where the Commanders train, but where the Washington Spirit train, real good. Mark Parsons, their head coach, on our show earlier today, had this to say about his team just a couple of games into their season. By the way, they're the last undefeated team in the league.
One thing we have got is a really fun team. This team has energy. This team is ready to take on the world. And they do it with a smile. I'm enjoying that as well. I'm normally a more experienced squad and the senior people like me who are always finding something to fix. This group is fun. Come and see this group. They're ready to take on the world. And when that stadium out of field has energy in it, anything's possible. And we're enjoying the ride at the moment.
He had so many good quotes in that interview. Like, Anthony, you're obviously not as big of a Spirit fan as I am. Like, someone who used to work there. I got friends on the team, the whole deal. People know that. But, like, to me, that was such a great interview because there were just universal coaching things, and his thoughts are so clearly organized. And it just makes me wonder, like, do all coaches have those types of thoughts and they just never articulate them, but soccer coaches do? Does it sound smarter because it's in a British accent? Or are we, like... Do we just accepted a level of dumbness from, and not dumbness in terms of their actual intellect, but dumbed downness from like NFL coaches that they just don't give us insight and we accept it and we just need to shake out of that and demand more in interviews?
I wish I had the answer, Craig, but I quite frankly don't. But what I do know, I will go see the Spirit play.
Yes. So they are, they're away this weekend. They're at Orlando. And then they're home like 3 or 4 straight weeks. So we got to get you. And I don't remember. I think there is a Wednesday nighter in there. That might be the week that I'm in New York, though. I think I'm missing a game, which sucks. But I can get tickets for you if you want to go Wednesday night.
Which Wednesday is this?
I think it's the 17th.
June?
Yeah.
Sign me up. I'm there.
Okay. And we got to go to a game together.
Yes, sir.
We'll figure that out on a weekend. So, yeah, it's a super fun team. Trinity Robb and Ashley Sanchez are like 2 of the 5 most fun players in the whole league, and they play together. All right. Western Conference Finals last night. KCP, former Wizard, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, also a former Laker, current Nugget, on the difference in playing with the 2 stars of the series, LeBron James, and Nikola Jokic.
I feel like the only difference is that Bron can jump higher than Jokic. I think that's the only difference that I can see.
That's a really offensive.
That actually is a really hilarious answer because it feels very true. Like, If you okay, hey, they can shoot, they can rebound, they defend. I mean, LeBron's a better defender, certainly in his prime. But they shoot, they rebound. They're two of the best passers we've ever seen. Part of the reason they're so good with passing is because they use their size to see different passing lanes that other people have never seen before. And then it's like, oh, who is it? It's like, it could be Magic Johnson. It could be LeBron. It could be Nikola Jokic. But it's true. They're also so strong. Watching Jokic just bully his way in a couple times last night on AD. Sheesh.
He was babying him, man. It looked really bad.
Where do you stand on the too small celebration? I think it's when it's hard to do, but dudes stand up, and it's like, oh, too small.
I like it. Mouse in the house, you're a baby. Yeah.
I think too many guys do it. You can't too small if you're a 6'2" guard.
Yeah.
If in the Celtics Heat series, Jimmy Butler gets guarded by Marcus Smart, and Butler suns him 3 or 4 straight possessions, Jimmy Butler's allowed to go too small.
Yeah.
Right? But the only other, it's got to actually be too small. I don't think it's one you can use ironically, unless it's Muggsy Bogues comes back and, posts up Yao Ming. Okay, fine. We'll allow that level of irony.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes the smaller guys, when they do it, I think it's just them mocking people.
To me, it comes off as Napoleon complex.
Yeah, Pat Bev doing this to Russell Westbrook. Are you really doing that to Russell Westbrook, who's 6'4"? Come on.
Pat Bev is such a... I'm not a Patrick Beverly fan. I know that probably stuns you.
Nah.
Not my kind of guy.
Nah, it doesn't shock me.
All right, that's the show. Unless this bite is really short, it's not. It's a nice solid minute long.
Yep.
All right, have fun with Doc and Scott tomorrow and Friday. I'll be back on Monday. Let's hope there's no gigantic news between now and then. Monday when I get back, owners meetings in Minnesota. So see you then. BetMGM tonight is next.
The Team 980 is always live on the free Odyssey app.
Definitely just hit the wrong button.
Furniture. Shop Regency Furniture today and get great deals on...